3 weeks in its reality. Yo, what's going on? It's someone that's no one, and welcome back to the 8th report in Deliriant week. This report is coming from Oliver off Earwood. When this happened, 2006, the drugs used, Brugmansia and Cannabis, at a dose of 220 milliliters. The route of administration, the user has tried smoking, sublingually, skin absorption, and finally, he doses orally with tea. Gender, male. Weight, 66.7 kilograms. Prior experience includes various use. And the setting, out and about casually. So in the 8th report in Deliriant week, we look at an experience that ends up lasting much longer than intended. This is one of the most fearful things about the tropane alkaloids. You don't know exactly how it might affect you, and the experience can have lingering effects, which here we see can last up to weeks. Sadly, this does affect his real life and cause him to lose his job over this because he can't act right. This is a good look into the long-term effects of Brugmansia, and also a good look into how cannabis can potentiate it. I think everyone's going to like this one, so without further ado, let's dive right into this. I first approached Brugmansia with great trepidation and expectation. However, my first experiences were disappointing. Smoked leaves had no effect. Smoked flowers caused a slight shift in perception with pupil dilation and no hallucinations. Raw leaves and flowers can cause stomach pain or vomiting. My preferred method of consuming raw plant material is to chew it for several minutes, then spit out the pulp. I use this method with alcohol. 4 large leaves are enough to induce a mild sedation with a heavy/floppy body sensation without delusions. Pulped plant material was rubbed into my body, absorbing the atropine and scopolamine externally. I tried this method because I was too anxious about eating plant material or drinking tea. During application, some fluid entered my left eye, causing long-term dilation and permanently deteriorated vision. This caused a minor shift in perception without hallucinations. Having tried every other method of ingestion, I wanted to try tea. I almost certainly drank too much because I was in a drunken-like stupor for 3 weeks while my dead best friend gave running commentary on my daily activities. This changed my life. I boiled 2 liters of water and added 16 finely chopped flowers, approximately 30 leaves, and a few thick stems. After straining, I shared 660 milliliters between 3 people, my friends Oliver, Dave, and Matt. The rest was frozen. The earthy brown liquid tasted bland and went down effortlessly. It didn't have any of the jelly-like gooiness of mushroom tea. We decided to vaporize some cannabis, eat some space cake, and then take a drive while it took effect. Around 30 minutes after ingestion, a dreamy sedation set in with free-falling sensations similar to ketamine or nutmeg, sort of like I was sinking into my seat. The same mundane views I see every day seemed outstanding, as if I were looking at them for the first time with the brightness turned up 10 times. I tried to drop my friends off at home so I could meditate back at my apartment without any distractions, but when Matt opened the car door, he collapsed headfirst into the pavement before staggering back to his feet and falling again. I got out with the intention of helping, but only succeed in making a public spectacle. We were in a busy part of town, and people were gathering in bewilderment. Someone shouted, "Oh my God, how pissed are they?" To cut a long story short, I returned home with Dave, who refused to get out, and left Matt to be escorted home by the police. We pulled up outside my apartment. Driving was easier than walking, and I staggered inside, leaving Dave alone in the car. I can't remember the first hallucination, or even when I began to think the tea was working. Every notion of the existence of a past, present, future, or even Brugmansia tea was gone. It was now just an empty shell in a blurry dreamscape of delusional chaos. Extreme dissociation left emotional concepts totally void. This felt quite liberating because there was temporarily no more desire, craving, habit, or fear. I have a phobia of spiders, but felt nothing when hundreds of hand-sized spiders scurried down my wall and into my mold-covered bed. The Grim Reaper stood in the corner of my room. I slurred, "Hello," and he waved back at me. Demonic bats flew at my head, and imaginary glasses of water moved back as I went to grab them. Fleas covered my ceiling and hopped upside down as if gravity had been reversed. I knew what I saw was impossible, but it looked too real to be an illusion. I grabbed a fly spray bottle and began spraying flea-infested areas. The interesting thing was that individual fleas dropped to the floor and died after coming into contact with the spray. I could fully interact with every hallucination. I lied in bed for a while, watching white doves swoop back and forth, pecking one another. I'm not sure if they were fighting or playing. They morphed into huge spiders, then again into insects. I then noticed a red dog tearing a chicken's head off a few feet in front of me. I reached out to touch them, but my hand went straight through. At this point, the doorbell rang. It was Dave, who had been sat in the car for a long time, asking the whereabouts of Matt. Neither of us had any recollection of abandoning him. "Come in, I think he's upstairs," I said. We spent a while looking for him. "There's definitely someone else here," I declare. Dave replies that he's also seeing people and sits down in the living room. I grew exhausted and got back into bed, but I couldn't bring myself to sleep, so I began walking into different rooms. Then I would forget what I was doing in there. Occasionally, I passed Dave on the way to the toilet and asked him what he was doing in my apartment. Sometime later, he walked home. The following day, he told me that he kept talking to Matt, then realizing he wasn't there. Deep into the trip, I become aware that I can move inanimate objects without the use of physical contact. Telekinesis seemed perfectly normal in Brug reality. With only a pointed finger, I could shift dog toys from one side of the hallway to the other. Each toy had a colorful trail as it drifted across the carpet. 14 hours after ingestion, I went to sleep in the living room because there were too many insects in the bedroom. The following day, I had work as a dinnerman in a local school. Still very high, I tried to phone in sick, but as the secretary answered the phone, I forgot who I was talking to and what I was supposed to say. I mumbled something about a friend in intensive care. The secretary told me I had to come to work, so I turned up in dark sunglasses, which I wore all day. I was now suffering from severe perspective distortion, which really isn't good when you've got to serve dinner to 75 kids. The problem I had with imaginary objects moving away from me was now happening with real objects. I made a fool of myself and resigned. My eyesight gradually returned to normal after 2 days, and the hallucinations tapered off over the following 3. However, the trip was far from over. I was in a drunken stupor for weeks and began to hear voices. Whenever I smoked cannabis, things really spiraled out of control. I became delusional and paranoid. The voices multiplied and became even clearer, and my entire field of vision was overcome by kaleidoscope patterns. These effects were enjoyable for a week, then the fear set in. I tried to write it out, but felt like a complete mess, and my family kept telling me I had taken too many drugs. After 2.5 weeks of delusional paranoia, I decided to throw away all of my cannabis plants and 3 ounces of high-potency cannabis. Within a month of sobriety, I returned to normal. The one thing that really amazed me about Brugmansia was the longevity of the experience. Please use with caution.